Lights, camera, action.
Welcome to the Requel podcast. I'm your host Tyler, and I'm not in the car. I'm actually at home taking I guess you could call it a mental health day. But we're going to talk Alien. The Aliens franchise. And this might be like one of my longer requels because this franchise has existed so long, and it's existed in what I'm kind of like pockets, and where I'm going to try to cover a lot of material. And I want to talk first about I'm looking at things canonically as like what counts from a film perspective. I know that there's been some video games, comics, novels. I have not dove into those and really gotten myself saturated in that world. But if I was looking at this as coming in, as always, and writing a script or the stories to tell or what's missing, and I've been rewatching the film series. Now, one thing I do want to point out, and I've had this discussion with Brian, is that I'm just going to say that Alien vs. Predator and Alien vs. Predator Requiem, that happens on Earth too. Unless you introduce time travel into this series, it does not work. They cannot be included as part of the same franchise, and that's made that's established with Covenant, and I'll talk about that. But I would just say that the Predator series and everything in films exist on like a separate Earth, because and the two Alien tie-ins there are there because they basically take place, if you're looking at a timeline, in 2004. And we know that somehow right around, I guess you could say, at the end of Covenant, which Covenant takes place in 2104, is when we get our first real xenomorph. So, but let's talk about this franchise. And like I said, I remember as a child seeing the commercials for the toys, and the toys were a big part of Aliens, and the franchise is unique in that the first film is more of this art house indie horror space film. And then the second film, which the sequel it takes place, actually was made years later. 7 off the top of my head. Upgrades it to an action sci-fi film series. And it's kind of struggled with where it wants to be. And I think the first two films really set the template of what can and can't be. So let's talk about this. I have in here, my pitches are sprinkled between the films because I have what I call the missing films. And I say this as we go through, so we'll do this. But missing film A. This film, and the closest thing I could find to it is I did some diving into some of the marketing short film material that was created for Prometheus and Covenant. They did what was called TED Talk 2023, which is hilarious. But it's Guy Pearce as Peter Weyland, younger Peter Weyland, introducing his ideas. And we really see a glimpse of what the world is like. They talk about curing cancer and everything, and the themes of, being the gods and fire and technology. And I feel like the way I say this is pocket franchising is because Covenant, Prometheus have very strong themes, and take this alien idea. If you go back and you watch Alien and Aliens, it's a much different. We're not wrestling with the creationism and the theories and evolving species as much as we do later. And so we set up, and that really is the first thing that plugs us into this world. So my missing film A is, what is the world like? More of this, just where is the Earth? Why are we colonizing space? First of all, every film has about colonizers and going into space. And what is Earth like? When did the Weyland company become Weyland-Yutani? Why does that happen? Like, what is this story, this need to get off Earth? And, the synthetics are talked about in that TED Talk 2003, how they're coming around, and this need to find gods. And I feel like some of these questions were just kind of mentioned in that short. But what is our Earth like that we have to go out and colonize space? Like, what are we going for? So that's kind of my first one. Was like, let's build the world, because, and I say that because when we get to Prometheus, which takes place in 2093, I like the idea of this film. It needed to be more or less alien. And, I like the idea of this film existing in the alien world and just building out that world. And in here, we're asking the questions of creation, and we could have done a really good story of building out that world. And then eventually, because this was supposed to be a trilogy, that maybe the last entry, and I'll get there, is the creation of the xenomorph. And, this movie, the Deacon was kind of weird and kind of forced. And I feel like this movie has too many wannabes of like pre-alien species. Because what's interesting is the way they talk in this film series, we don't see any other alien life forms other than what we see in Covenant and Prometheus. Sorry. All this, like I said, I'm going through the series. I haven't completed it yet because I'm up to Alien 3 and 4, which I feel are the lesser of the series, and doesn't tie in as much to what we've recently done. And with this whole thing's coming out because Romulus is coming out, and in my notes I have just kind of where Romulus takes place. But so after Prometheus, what we really have is what I call missing film B, because in Prometheus we have themes of we have scientists that aren't very smart. We have the idea of interpretation is what I put, is because, she says in the quote of, it's an invitation. No, maybe it's a painting of them pointing to where they came from, the stars, and leaving like, this is where we're from, but she's interpreting it as come find us. And I think that's a point of, I think Prometheus asks a lot of dark, deep questions in that world and expands on the space jockey. And this could have really been, for quote, the space jockey trilogy. But missing film B. This is what's glossed over in David's flashback. This should have, for where it gets, and even in the subsequent thing where you see David tuck Shaw in like a little short, that was, part of the material. I don't where he goes is dark, and we gloss over that. This should have been the film where about man really killing God, so to speak, because David's turn to the darkness, how he betrays Shaw, and then he blanketly murders the engineers upon arrival. Like in that little short, it shows Shaw fixing David and what's happening. And, when Prometheus ends, we're at the point they're going to find their creators. Okay. All right. That sounds like a very interesting idea. And they could have gotten there and interacted with the engineers and then had this. So story could have been developed where, David, we see where David turns and just basically, decides that the only way for them is to blanketly destroy the engineers, and he obliterates their home world. And we could have learned more about the engineers. And if we did want to actually interact with and keep more mystery to them, we could have had, because there's no hyperdrive or warp drive. And we don't even really understand, on the ship that the engineers have that David's piloting, if there's anything like that. So there could have been something like that. And we could have done where, there's more people, like a rescue team or something that arrives and interacts, or I don't know. I'm working on it. But the idea is, if you want to wrestle these philosophical conversations, because I feel like you could have had it where, David destroys the engineers, like your midpoint. And then you have the battle between David and Shaw and what other people that are there or whatever. We see some of the other creations and experiments that the engineers were working on. And they could have been kind of this idea more so of the creation of the cosmos. And because I thought, okay, this is just an idea. Like, what if the engineers created the predators? Like, it's one of the races, and that's kind of their thing, is they would go to a world and set up evolution and see what would happen. But it is just, we go now into Alien Covenant, which is 2104. And it really hits harder and deep themes as the opening of Covenant. Covenant is the sequel to Prometheus, but also to Alien. And it's like, this goes back to if Prometheus had been less alien and more its own thing and really explored the world that was going to lead to Alien. But the themes are harder and deeper. Its opening happens before Prometheus. It's kind of, we have Guy Pearce back as Peter Whalen as the birth of David, so to speak. And it seems like David is created individually more than the mass-produced synthetics that we would fall into. And that's kind of why we put David on this path to eventually him creating the xenomorph of, he's put down because of what he is from his creator, who is Whalen. And you have the themes of creation and destruction. And one thing is, like, this is kind of, in this film, we meet Walter, but why Walter? Like, why the W? Why the name? Why continue from David? I don't know. Why not a new model with its own face? And one issue that this film and Prometheus both shares is the prequel issue, where building mystery or intrigue, but also when the technology looks better than it did in the first films. They're supposed to come later, more in their future. And I said that Covenant, for what it is, should have been the third film in this trilogy. And like I said, with missing film B, should have led into Covenant, and you could have put this opening of Covenant with David in film B, and kind of fill it in more of that story. And this should have been about, like, the colonists. And then we find out, should be a little bit mystery. They land on this planet, and we go through things, and we find out the planet that they're on is actually the engineers. And the reason why David, hailed them is because he needs more people for his experiments, because he's basically twisted this planet. And that's all in here, right? But we have the protomorph and other, like, pre-xenomorph type stuff in Covenant. And Covenant tries to get back to more of this horror drama sci-fi film. It's epic and massive and huge. And I don't know if that's really what the Alien franchise needs. It's because you go back and you watch Alien and even Aliens, everything's in shadows and quiet. Like, now we're dealing with CG xenomorph compared to a person in a suit. And we have the Great Queen that's in Aliens. That just was, like, massive and awesome. But it's more gory and more horror. We have too many pre-alien aliens that doesn't take away. It takes away the speciality of the alien and the chest burster. And if you prequel problems, if you watch these in order, when you get to the chest burster, you know what's going to happen. There could be a message in there too about AI. And the whole point, like, at the end where David replaces Walter, was that really supposed to be a big twist? Were we supposed to not know that was David? I feel like watching again, like, it kind of is like it's trying to play that. But then we get to what I call missing film C. How we get to Alien. How does the company know of the xenomorph surviving in the chest burster, David Jockey? So this is the film where David takes the Covenant ship and he lands on LV, the original planet, which I just deleted in my notes, and I'm horrible with numbers, so I cannot remember. But he lands on the original planet from Alien, okay? Because Covenant takes place in 2104. It's 2122 that Alien happens. And what happens is he's there, and we find out there's, like, an engineer ship that's out there in the galaxy, in space, that's learned of what's happened and has been returned to their home planet to find what happened, and through space powers, is actually tracking David. Because somehow we have to get a space jockey to that original planet, since Prometheus decided not to make the planet the original alien planet. Okay. So in Missing Film C is basically the space jockey coming to David opening the colonists, the people, the colonists, and trying to set up a colony so that he can then take the spores that he coughed up and breed. Okay. That's the plan. But the space jockey gets there, and maybe there's a couple of them, because what I'm thinking is that the one that we find in Alien, where it has his chest burst out, what I thought would be a neat idea is if that was one of those things that David coughed up in Covenant, and it was actually the queen. He actually engineered a queen so that he didn't, because we know somehow that he had eggs in Covenant, his first eggs. So the idea, he's trying to make his species more. So the queen is actually what is birthed from the space jockey, because we know that there's a queen laying eggs all over that ship. There's a queen on the planet when they return for aliens. I just thought we don't know the life cycle of the xenomorph or anything, but my thought is, we have this and transmission, or David catalogs it in the Covenant, or the Covenant's beacon is picked up, and the company is alerted to that the Covenant lost ship is on this planet. And that's kind of what happens. Is so when that movie's ending, we see like the company looking around at vessels, and that's how they learn about this creature. So they already know. Someone at the company already knows. They want it. They see David's diaries, whatever he's done on that ship. David's killed, by the way. He's destroyed. This is by the engineer. I think that's poetic, or by his own creation, which makes it even more poetic, which would be like the queen of the xenomorph that comes out. And we could have something where we have the ship and everything's set up, like all these eggs are laid. And you could even say the queen is dead, whatever. So I like the idea of the queen being alive and just being like in hiding or something on the planet, because they're not there long in Alien. But the idea is then the company alerts the closest ship, which is the Nostromo, which takes us into Alien, which is 2122. And this film, rewatching, it's very much a mystery film, as much as it is a horror sci-fi, because you have so many questions like, what is and who is Mother? Like, why do they have Mother? Why are they out in space? The company, they refer to the company. Who is this company? What is going on at Earth? They talk about Earth. They talk about the mothers giving them these assignments. And we have this team land, and, they get the alien and all that, and they experience it and what's going on. And it doesn't quite work as what the company had originally wanted, but we know that Ash, the synthetic, got the message. So it's kind of interesting when you look at the times of like how many synthetics are being made. Like that goes back to why Walter and Covenant, because we know they're making different looking synthetics like Ash. So it is what it is. But the idea is in Alien, I feel like it's a slow burn horror mystery but once you kind of know it's not as interesting. I don't know. Like I watched it and I was like, I can appreciate it. It's interesting. It's fascinating story building. But at the same time, like it could have been a one and done, but yet it leaves it open with all those eggs and everything on that planet. Like who else is going to come there? And that leads me to this. We know that Romulus is supposed to take place in 2142 between Alien and Aliens. Now, I don't know what Romulus is going to entail. So I'm not going to speculate either. But when we get to Aliens, it's very much like a sci-fi world film. There's so much. We have the Marines, the military, and we see how much the company's expanded, and Ripley wakes up and all that. So my thought is, there is a story. Romulus excluded, okay, between Alien and Aliens, where you could say, if we go back to missing film C and then Alien, you have people from the company come to that planet and they try to harvest the alien, destroy the eggs, get it ready for the colonists. Basically clean up, because somebody wants what happens in the events of Aliens to happen. Because David's plan of setting a colony there and having the aliens thrive did not work. But then, of course, that plan doesn't exactly go. They set it up. They clean up the alien stuff, the alien ships, the engineer ship, all the evidence. And then that movie would end with the colony being settled. And then we see some eggs. And it ends on that kind of down note. And so that sets up, the events of Aliens. But I just feel like I said, I haven't watched Alien 3 or Resurrection yet, and I'll get there eventually. But I feel like where we are now with the franchise, with Romulus taking place between the first two films, and where they were building out this series of movies, and Covenant leaves us questioning so much. We have no idea what happened. I was like, there's more story to tell. And I say that because there's a bunch of short films. There's Alien Containment, Alien Species, Alien Night Shift, Alien Ore, Alien Harvest, and Alien Alone. These short films that are on the 20th Century Fox's YouTube page that are thriller, kind of small, but they're very much the same base. Lost ship, people, and some of them are better than others because your budget, you actually get to see a xenomorph or not. But what I see is in those repeated patterns of character, repeated style, but also somehow in those, the aliens are spreading. And somewhere in that story, you could talk about the aliens have gotten onto more planets. They're not as contained as we thought they were. And the galaxy's becoming smaller because the aliens are destroying things. And we could even find a planet that is completely dead. We find just all dead xenomorphs because we don't even really know what xenomorphs feed on. And like I said, I am looking at this through the films. I haven't dove into the subsequent I give up talking, people. I have not got into the tie-in materials. So those are kind of my pitches and discussion. Like I said, I have pitches, but they're all kind of tied into looking at covering where the franchise is. Because I feel like that you're creating a fascinating world, and this alien thing is part of it. But I feel like Prometheus really wanted to create more, and then it wasn't allowed to do so. But that's my episode. Let me know. I'm Tyler, host of the Krypton Report. You can find me on all socials there, or requel@gmail.com, requelpodcast@gmail.com. Sorry, I had to update the email. But let me know your thoughts. And yeah, if you have your own pitch for an alien film, I'd love to hear it. It's always crazy when people try to take these things, these franchises, and want to take them into crazy ways. So I think it's a unique franchise for what it is. And my other big question I'll leave you with is, if Yutani and them got it, what are they going to do with it? Like, why would you want this as a weapon? For who? We don't know what the Earth looks like, why they're fighting. How can you make money off this? Like, that would be an interesting discussion. So, till next time.